You already know what this device is, it's the Pixel 3 and it's just turned 6 months old. Despite countless leaks prior to launch, we knew almost everything except for how it would fare after 6 months of almost daily use and abuse. So how does it hold up? Let's find out. Hey there, Damien here again for 9to5 Google, and I've been using the Pixel 3 XL almost daily. Well, I do say almost daily as I do tend to switch phones quite a bit for the past 6 months, and I'm still pretty convinced that despite a few admittedly minor issues, the Pixel 3 is still one of the best phones on the market. Let's first talk about the design, which we knew thanks to the myriad of leaks. You couldn't say the design of the Pixel 3 is particularly cutting edge, but it is attractive in its own way. Now I will say that the much maligned deep notch is not good, there's genuinely and literally no avoiding it, such as the amount it cuts into the display, but more on that slightly later. I'm in love with these softly rounded edges, especially towards the bottom of the handset, as when held for extended periods I do tend to rest my pinky finger without serious discomfort. The shape is arguably one of the most pleasing aspects that I hadn't expected with the Pixel 3 XL, as it's rather uninspiring for the most part. Round back, the frosted glass texture just has to be felt to be explained. I can't really explain what it feels like. My best way of describing it is the reverse of sandpaper. In actuality, it actually helps hide dings, scrapes and scuffs that a little bit better, at least on my clearly white model. Overall, it's a tough cookie even with a glass back. If you were worried about durability, I find it's been excellent in practice. The pixel imprint or fingerprint scanner on the rear is in just the perfect position for stability, and it's accurate, but most importantly fast. I do hope that Google doesn't adopt the in-display option though on the Pixel 4. Let's talk more about the front, because I will say that it's a bit more of a mixed bag up here. Although technically on the side, the button placement on the right is par for the course, but I do like the accented sleep wake button, and the clicky feedback is as good as it gets on mobile. My experience with the display has been excellent bar one big obnoxious inclusion. Viewing angles are great, the colours are consistent and accurate, which makes viewing content, especially photos, excellent in practice. Now the notch does need a section of its own, so here it goes. It's awful, but now for the cop out, you get used to it. Then all of a sudden something draws your attention to it again and you literally can't stop noticing it. I find the biggest problem is the lack of tech packed inside. It's literally just a massive notch housing for an underused wide angle selfie lens. I don't take selfies, so why would I want to take wide angle selfies? It makes the entire notch feel like it's catered for the kind of person who is vain enough, but will they know about the Pixel in the first place? I could accept its inclusion if there was some impressive 3D face scanning tech or something entirely new, but no, it's simply a big old blotch in an otherwise decent display. Again, I'm hoping there's something a little bit different up Google's sleeve for the Pixel 4. Switching now to the core reason stock Android is so revered, especially on reference devices, and having had some serious time with the Pixel 3 XL, it's still one of the best experiences I've had on an Android device, at least on Android Pie, and that is even with a few issues. I hate the cliche buttery smooth, but there is a reason it's applied to the Pixel line. The Pixel 3 XL feels slick, cohesive, and for the most part, snappy. I won't lie to you and say I'm a fan of the stock Pixel launcher and the Android Pie gesture controls, but like many, I'll often stick Nova Launcher on and tweak until I get the setup I desire, which more often than not resembles a somewhat vanilla setup in many regards. I just find that Nova Launcher alleviates some of the janky gestures and swiping up and holding into your app drawer when using the Pixel launcher, but it does remove a few neat features like the most recent within your app drawer and the most recent app viewer. Even with seemingly little RAM at 4GB, the Pixel does fly through most tasks. It only really creaks and shows issues with regard to multitasking. I can't excuse YouTube Music randomly stopping in the background without any user input, even when the problem was said to be fixed. I do tend to clear my recent apps to ensure I've purged any RAM-hungry applications. Luckily, this seems to have solved many of my multitasking issues. Apps do still refresh though after being returned from being placed in stasis, but for the most part, clearing your recents will help stop this pretty major frustration. Of course, devices like the OnePlus 6T with a much larger RAM overhead and sped up OS inertia feel faster by proxy, but the experience just isn't quite the same in many regards, and I do say that as someone who thinks Oxygen OS is arguably superior to stock in almost all aspects. Having recently installed the Android Q beta, I can see many improvements, but as this is still a beta test, I can't recommend installing it on your daily phone just yet. Now we can't talk about the Pixel 3 XL without discussing that camera. What it can do with a solitary lens is nothing short of miraculous. I'll go so far as to say that the camera is so good, even when I'm reviewing another device, I'll always carry the Pixel with me regardless. Exposure, dynamic range, sharpness, contrast and colour accuracy in almost all shooting scenarios are absolutely head and shoulders above every other handset on the market. Yes, you can get more detailed images from other camera systems, but often the end result just isn't as pleasing right out of the camera. My opinion that it's almost as if Google has put all of their eggs into the camera basket to put it at the very top of the tree with regard to overall stills performance. When non-techies would discuss the best camera phones, you'd often wrongly hear that the iPhone is the best smartphone camera to get. But even Apple can no longer claim that in marketing material. Google is number one without needing more than one lens, and that absolutely must sting all manufacturers out there. I will say though that the P30 Pro is the closest in terms of camera performance that I've seen so far, but it does lack consistency in my tests, especially with the long exposure night mode. That Huawei made night mode was no doubt one of the catalysts for the frankly incredible night sight. It can do wonders by simply using long exposure and AI post-processing to do things that other camera systems simply can't. Like I said, if I had to pick up one camera to take with me and guarantee that I got the most pleasing shot every time, even despite how good the P30 Pro is in terms of flexibility, I'd have to say the Pixel purely on aesthetics. Of course that is subjective, but here's a few examples of some of the best shots I've taken with the Pixel 3 to show you its insane capabilities. Just continuing on from the stills photography, in the video arena the Pixel 3 XL has definitely left me feeling wanting. There were audio issues and no 4K 60 FPS is not really ideal, but for 1080p shooting modes it does okay. It's still a far cry from its stills capabilities and something that really needs to be improved upon come the Pixel 4's release. So before we wrap up, let's talk about another slightly sore point with the Pixel 3 XL particularly, and that is the battery life. I can't honestly say the battery is stellar because it's middling to average at best. Although I don't really like using screen on time as a metric for battery longevity, there aren't really many other ways to demonstrate the averageness of the Pixel 3 XL's battery. I had screen on time reach the 5-hour mark on only 3 occasions in 6 months. That is pretty poor even with a 3450 mAh battery. It pales in comparison to other phones like the OnePlus 6T, albeit with a Full HD Plus display compared to a QHD panel on the Pixel 3 XL, and that manages 8 hours plus of screen on time with a price tag that is a few $100s less. My personal experience is that I'm not always confident that the Pixel will manage a full day before giving up and powering off. If I do head out solely with my Pixel, I have to carry a separate power bank with me or the charge brick just in case. Luckily though, the fast charging does give you enough to manage a full day with a 50-minute top up halfway through, but this is another area where the Pixel 4 definitely needs to improve. Now let's talk recommendations, because despite some issues the Pixel 3 XL is still one of the best Android phones on the market, even 6 months after release. My biggest point in this is the fact that even after reviewing several handsets per month for the past 6 months, always without fail I've returned to my Pixel, such is the overall experience. Part of that of course is the exceptional software experience, and some of that is my love for the hardware. Yes, there are other devices on the market that offer similar hardware and in some cases a faster experience, but that doesn't discount what the Pixel 3 can offer. With arguably the best camera system on the market, which I do understand is open to debate, guaranteed future OS updates when they're available, and now a much cheaper price than at launch, the Pixel 3 XL is most definitely still at the summit of the Android ecosystem, alongside the very best the industry has to offer. Of course, it would be great to hear what you think, good, bad or in between. Dive into the comment section and let us know below. Then before you head off, subscribe to the channel to see more content just like this. Regardless of that, this is Damien from 9to5 Google saying thanks again for watching, and I will speak to you later.